Picture yourself at the final table of a major Texas Hold'em tournament. The pot is massive. You peek at your cards, and you're holding a 2 and a 7, the absolute worst starting hand in the game. You have a choice: quietly fold and lose the chips you've already committed, or push your remaining stack all in and bluff. If you play it safe, you might adopt what game theorists call a pure strategy. You look at this decision tree, and your actions map to a strict reality. You get a good hand, you raise. You get a bad hand, you fold. But against observant opponents, that strict mapping guarantees you will eventually lose. They will notice that you only put money in the pot when you have the cards to back it up. The moment you raise, they automatically fold. You win a few small pots, but you never secure the massive payout. So you try the opposite extreme. You start raising on terrible hands, like that 2-7. But if you always bluff on bad cards, your opponents spot God Tadong too. They lock on to your aggressive play, call your bluffs, and quickly drain your entire stack. In any zero-sum environment, where one person's win is mathematically tied to another's loss, absolute predictability is a fatal flaw. To survive, you have to inject uncertainty into your actions. You have to bluff at least some of the time. At the World Series of Poker, these mathematical boundaries define a high-pressure arena where millions of dollars ride on a single decision. But that brings up a difficult question. How often exactly is sometimes? Pop culture tells us that bluffing relies on a gut feeling, a sixth sense, or the ability to spot a bead of sweat on someone's forehead. The reality is far colder. Game theory dictates that there is a mathematically perfect frequency for your bluffs, completely independent of human intuition. It requires what is known as a mixed strategy. The solution to this predictability problem traces back to mathematician John Nash. He codified what's known as the mixed strategy Nash Equilibrium. Instead of choosing a single definitive action, you treat your decision like a weighted coin flip. You assign a strict probability to each of your available moves, and let that mathematical ratio dictate your play. Nash built on the foundational work of John von Neumann, who first realized that the hidden information in card games could be precisely mapped out with formulas. Look at this matrix representing the von Neumann-Morgenstern poker model. We have a player, let's call her Anne. She holds a mix of cards categorized simply into high-value hands and low-value hands, and she needs to optimize when to bet. The model reveals her exact required frequencies. Anne must raise 100% of the time when holding a high card. But crucially, she must also raise, or bluff, exactly 2/3 of the time when holding a low card. By strictly adhering to these fractions, Anne builds a mathematical armor. Even if her opponent knows exactly what strategy she is using, they cannot exploit her betting patterns over thousands of hands. Here is the core of this entire framework. You don't randomize your bluffs just to act chaotic. You calibrate those specific ratios to make your opponent mathematically indifferent. When you mix your bluffs and your value bets at the perfect equilibrium, the math levels out. If your opponent chooses to call, their expected payoff drops to exactly 0. That zero-value payoff neutralizes their ability to outsmart you. It doesn't matter how long they study your face or how well they read human behavior. They could literally flip a coin to decide whether to call your bet, and their long-term financial outcome would be exactly the same as if they agonized over the decision for hours. Forcing that mathematical indifference is the ultimate triumph in game theory. You stop playing the player, and you make your own strategy completely unexploitable. But there is a massive gap between knowing the math and actually executing it on a casino floor. The human brain is terrible at generating true randomness, especially under intense pressure. We naturally fall victim to things like the gambler's fallacy. We think that if we've folded 5 times in a row, we are somehow due to bluff. In our attempt to mix things up, our intuition accidentally builds new, predictable patterns. Professional players know they can't trust their own minds. To bypass this biological flaw, they use external randomizers. They'll look at the suit of their hidden cards, or glance at the second hand on their watch, using those external variables to dictate exactly when they pull the trigger on a bluff. They abandon their gut feelings entirely. To execute a perfect mixed strategy, you have to remove human emotion and surrender your choices to the math. And you see this exact same math governing choices far beyond the poker table. Look at elite physical sports. When a soccer player takes a penalty kick, they randomize their shots to the left or right to prevent the goalkeeper from predicting their path. Professional tennis players do the exact same thing on a serve. They distribute their targets with strict probabilities, forcing the receiver into a state of mathematical indifference. The stakes scale far beyond games, too. The United States Coast Guard relies on a variation called Stackelberg game theory to schedule their security patrols. By assigning strict probabilities to their routes, they ensure that observing adversaries can never find a predictable gap in their defenses. True unpredictability has nothing to do with random chaos. It is a meticulously calculated armor. It forces the conflict out of your opponent's head and into the cold, unexploitable realm of mathematics.